I never imagined that a simple house with a neat lawn would lead to the most infuriating battle of my life. The day Patricia Blackwell became the president of Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association was the day my peaceful suburban existence began its slow descent into chaos. My name is Yuri Collins, and until 6 months ago, I was just another resident in our quiet neighborhood in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a software engineer who works from home most days, which means I witness the HOA drama firsthand rather than hearing about it secondhand like most of my neighbors who commute to downtown offices. It all started when Patricia, or Patty, as she insisted everyone call her, though I never would decided that my dark blue Audi S5 was an eyesore when parked in my own driveway. According to her, the HOA bylaws stated that vehicles must be kept in garages when not in use, but I knew for a fact that this rule was selectively enforced at best. "Mr. Collins," she said one morning as I was retrieving my mail, her honey blonde bob not moving an inch despite the brisk spring breeze. "We need to discuss your continued violation of Section 8, Paragraph 3 of the Covenant." I sighed, already knowing what was coming. "Good morning to you too, Patricia." Her smile tightened at my refusal to use her preferred nickname. "Your vehicle needs to be kept in your garage. It's been parked in your driveway for 3 consecutive nights now. My garage is being renovated," I explained for what felt like the 10th time. "The contractor is refinishing the floor. It'll be done by next week." "Then perhaps you should have arranged for alternative parking. The rules apply to everyone, Mr. Collins," she said, glancing pointedly at my car. What she didn't mention was that her own daughter, Madeline, regularly parked her bright red Mustang in their driveway without consequence. Madeline was a 22-year-old college student who lived with Patricia and seemed to have inherited her mother's entitlement but none of her restraint. "I'll look into it," I said noncommittally, knowing full well I wasn't going to inconvenience myself for a rule that only seemed to apply to people Patricia didn't like. As she walked away, I noticed several other cars parked in driveways along our street. Dave Wilson's pickup truck had been in his driveway for as long as I could remember. Nancy Jackson's minivan never saw the inside of a garage, but Patricia had decided I was her target of the month. Little did I know that this was just the opening salvo in what would become a neighborhood war. The following week, after my garage floor was finally done, I received a written notice of violation in my mailbox. According to Patricia, my violation of the parking rule had resulted in a $100 fine, which I was expected to pay within 30 days. I marched straight to her house that evening, notice in hand. "This is ridiculous," I said when she opened the door. "My garage was being renovated, which I explained to you, and even if that weren't the case, at least 6 other houses on this street regularly have cars in their driveways." Patricia's face remained impassive. "The board voted unanimously on this fine, Mr. Collins. If you'd like to appeal, you're welcome to attend next month's meeting." "Next month? The fine is due in 30 days. Then I suggest you pay it on time to avoid late fees." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Behind her, I could see Madeline lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone with apparent disinterest in our conversation. The red Mustang was visible through their front window, parked in the driveway. "What about that?" I pointed at the Mustang. "That's been in your driveway for weeks." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "My daughter has a medical condition that makes it difficult for her to open the garage door. We have documentation on file with the board." It was the most transparent lie I'd ever heard, but I knew arguing would get me nowhere. I turned and walked away, determined to fight this through proper channels. The next day, I submitted a formal appeal and began documenting every vehicle parked in a driveway in our neighborhood. I took date-stamped photos morning and evening, creating a spreadsheet of violations that Patricia chose to ignore. I also decided to install a security camera system. I'd been meaning to do it anyway for general safety, but now it seemed like a necessary precaution. I opted for a comprehensive setup. Cameras covering my front yard, driveway, the street in front of my house, and my backyard. The system was connected to my phone, allowing me to monitor my property from anywhere. The HOA meeting was still 3 weeks away when things escalated. I was in my home office on a Zoom call with clients when I received a notification from my security system. The motion detector had been triggered in my driveway. I glanced at the live feed on my second monitor and saw Madeline Blackwell standing next to my car, which was now parked in the driveway again while I unloaded some groceries. At first, I thought she might be leaving another notice, but then I saw something metallic in her hand. I excused myself from the call and rushed downstairs, but by the time I got outside, Madeline was already walking away. My beautiful Audi now had a long, deep scratch running the entire length of the driver's side. "Hey!" I shouted after her. She turned, and for a moment, I saw panic flash across her face before it was replaced with cool indifference. "Can I help you?" she asked, as if she hadn't just vandalized my property. "You keyed my car," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite my rage. She laughed. "Prove it." With those 2 words, she turned and continued walking toward her house, where I could see Patricia standing in the doorway watching. I pulled out my phone and reviewed the security footage. The camera had captured everything in perfect clarity. Madeline approaching my car, looking around to make sure no one was watching, and then deliberately dragging a key along the side of my vehicle. The damage would cost thousands to repair. I called the police immediately. Officer Daniel Rodriguez arrived within 20 minutes. He was a middle-aged man with a calm demeanor who listened carefully as I explained the situation. "You have the video footage?" he asked. "Yes, I can show you right now," I said, pulling up the footage on my phone. We watched together as Madeline committed the crime in broad daylight. Officer Rodriguez nodded grimly. "That's pretty clear evidence," he said. "I'll need to take a statement from you and get a copy of that video." While Officer Rodriguez was taking my statement, Patricia came storming across the street, her face flushed with anger. "What is going on here?" she demanded. "Why is there a police car in front of my neighbor's house?" Officer Rodriguez turned to her. "Madam, I'm conducting an investigation." "I'll need to speak with your daughter, Madeline Blackwell." Patricia's expression shifted from anger to concern. "My daughter? What about her?" "She's been caught on video vandalizing Mr. Collins' vehicle," Officer Rodriguez explained, his tone professional but firm. "That's absurd," Patricia scoffed. "My daughter would never do such a thing. She's a Dean's List student at NC State." "Madam, we have video evidence," the officer repeated. "I need to speak with your daughter now." Patricia's face paled. "She's not home." But at that very moment, we all heard the distinctive roar of the Mustang's engine as it pulled into their driveway. Madeline got out, freezing when she saw the police car. Officer Rodriguez walked over to her while Patricia hurried to intercept him. "Officer, I want a lawyer present before you speak to my daughter," Patricia insisted. "That's her right," Officer Rodriguez acknowledged. "But I should inform you that we have clear video evidence of her vandalizing Mr. Collins' vehicle. She's facing charges of criminal mischief, which could be a felony depending on the cost of the damage." Madeline's confident demeanor crumbled. "Mom, don't say anything, Maddie," Patricia cut her off. She turned to me, her expression a mixture of fury and panic. "This is harassment. You've been targeting my family ever since I became HOA president." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Your daughter keyed my car on camera and somehow I'm harassing you. Officer Rodriguez intervened. Madam, I'm going to need both of you to calm down. Madeline, you have the right to remain silent and to have an attorney present during questioning. Do you understand these rights? The realization that this was serious, that her actions had real consequences, seemed to dawn on Madeline's face. She nodded silently. I want to speak to my daughter alone, Patricia demanded. That's fine, Officer Rodriguez said, but I'll need to take her to the station for formal questioning. You're welcome to meet us there with your attorney. Patricia looked like she might explode. This is outrageous. Do you know who I am in this community? Mom, Madeline said quietly. It's on video. The admission seemed to deflate Patricia momentarily. She glared at me with such hatred that I almost took a step back. This isn't over, Collins, she hissed, before turning to follow Officer Rodriguez, who was now escorting Madeline to his patrol car. I stood in my driveway, watching as Madeline was placed in the back of the police car. She wasn't handcuffed. Officer Rodriguez explained that since she was cooperating, he didn't see the need, but the sight still sent a clear message to everyone in the neighborhood who had come out to witness the commotion. As the police car drove away, I felt a mix of satisfaction and unease. I'd won this round, but I'd also made an enemy of the most powerful woman in the neighborhood. And Patricia Blackwell did not strike me as someone who would take defeat gracefully. Later that day, I received a call from the auto body shop. The estimate to repair the damage to my Audi came to $3,800. Because the amount exceeded $1,000, Madeline would be charged with a Class I felony under North Carolina law, something that could seriously impact her future if she was convicted. Part of me felt bad for her. She was young and clearly influenced by her mother's sense of entitlement. But another part of me remembered her smug prove it and felt she deserved whatever consequences came her way. The following day, my phone rang with an unknown number. "Is this Yuri Collins?" a man's voice asked when I answered. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Nathan Hargrove, attorney for the Blackwell family. I'm calling to discuss the unfortunate incident involving Miss Blackwell and your vehicle." I sat up straighter. "What about it?" "My clients would like to resolve this matter privately. They're prepared to cover all repair costs for your vehicle and offer additional compensation for your inconvenience. In exchange, they ask that you withdraw your complaint with the police." I laughed despite myself. "Your client's daughter committed a felony on camera, and now you want me to help sweep it under the rug? Mr. Collins, everyone makes mistakes. Madeline is a young woman with a promising future. A felony conviction would severely impact her educational and career prospects." "She should have thought about that before she keyed my car," I replied. "And she should have thought about it when she had the chance to admit what she'd done instead of challenging me to prove it." "I understand your frustration." Hargrove's voice remained calm. "What if, in addition to covering the repair costs, my clients also agree to resign from the HOA board and cease all enforcement actions against you?" That gave me pause. The offer was tempting. Getting Patricia off my back would make my life significantly easier. But something about it didn't sit right with me. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Please do, and call me at this number when you've made your decision." After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, contemplating my options. On one hand, I could get my car fixed at no cost to me and be free of Patricia's vendetta. On the other hand, letting Madeline off the hook felt wrong on principle. My thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Nicole James, my next-door neighbor. "Hey, Yuri," she said, her expression concerned. "I heard about what happened with your car. That's terrible." Nicole was one of the few neighbors I was actually friendly with. She was a pediatric nurse with a warm personality who had moved in about a year before me. We often helped each other with small tasks. I'd take in her packages when she was working long shifts, and she'd water my plants when I traveled for work. "Thanks, Nicole. It's been a mess. Can I come in? I have some information you might find interesting." I stepped aside to let her in, curious about what she had to say. As we sat in my living room, Nicole seemed hesitant to begin. "What is it?" I prompted. "You know I try to stay out of neighborhood drama," she started, "but what Patricia's been doing isn't right. And it's not just you she's targeting." Nicole proceeded to tell me that since becoming HOA president 6 months ago, Patricia had been systematically harassing certain homeowners while ignoring violations by others, particularly her friends and family members. Last month, she fined the Ramirez family for their children's basketball hoop, claiming it violated aesthetic standards. Meanwhile, her friend Barbara has the exact same model in her driveway with no issues. "That doesn't surprise me," I said. "It gets worse," Nicole continued. "The HOA funds have been mysteriously dwindling. The treasurer, Tom Wilkins, resigned last month after questioning some expenditures that Patricia approved without board consultation. This was news to me. What kind of expenditures?" "Landscaping services for the common areas that never seemed to happen. Administrative costs that weren't itemized. And get this, they hired a security consultant at Patricia's insistence who turns out to be her brother-in-law." I leaned back, processing this information. "So she's not just selectively enforcing rules. She might be embezzling from the HOA," Nicole nodded. "A group of us have been gathering evidence quietly. We were planning to bring it up at the next general meeting, but with what happened to your car, well, I thought you should know." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I saw Patricia's lawyer visiting you earlier." At my surprised look, she added, "Small neighborhood, big windows. I figured they were trying to buy your silence. And honestly, what Madeline did to your car seems like an extension of Patricia's belief that she's above the rules." I told Nicole about the offer to have my car repaired in exchange for dropping the charges. "I'm not surprised," she said. "Patricia can't afford to have this played out publicly, especially with the financial questions starting to surface." By the time Nicole left, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let the Blackwells off the hook, not just for my sake, but for the entire neighborhood. I called Attorney Hargrove back. "I've considered your offer," I told him, "and I'm not interested. Madeline will have to face the consequences of her actions, and if Patricia wants to step down from the HOA board, she can do so without my promise to drop any charges." There was a pause on the other end. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mr. Collins. My clients won't be pleased." "That's not my concern," I replied before ending the call. The following morning, I woke to find my front yard had been toilet papered and eggs had been thrown at my house. Childish, but clearly meant to intimidate me. I cleaned up the mess and checked my security footage. The perpetrators had worn hoodies and kept their faces hidden, but one of them had a distinctive red Mustang key fob hanging from their pocket. I called Officer Rodriguez to report the vandalism and sent him the new footage. While it wasn't conclusive enough to press charges, it would establish a pattern of harassment. That afternoon, I received an email notification about an emergency HOA meeting scheduled for the following evening. The subject: discussion of security camera regulations in Maple Creek Estates. It didn't take a genius to figure out what Patricia was planning. She wanted to create new rules restricting security cameras, likely with the goal of forcing me to remove the very cameras that had caught her daughter in the act. I forwarded the email to Nicole, who quickly rallied several other homeowners who had been victims of Patricia's selective enforcement. By that evening, we had organized a response plan for the meeting. The HOA meeting was held in our neighborhood clubhouse, a modest building near the community pool that was typically used for social gatherings and board meetings. When I arrived, the room was already packed, with more homeowners in attendance than I'd ever seen before. Patricia sat at the front table with the remaining board members, looking smugly confident. She gavelled the meeting to order with an authoritative rap that silenced the room. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "We have an urgent matter to discuss regarding privacy and security in our community." She launched into a clearly prepared speech about how unrestricted security cameras posed privacy risks to neighbors, and how the board was proposing a new regulation requiring approval for all exterior cameras, with strict guidelines about where they could be pointed. "Furthermore," she continued, "any existing cameras that don't comply with these new guidelines would need to be removed or repositioned within 14 days of the rule's adoption." The room remained silent as she laid out the proposed restrictions, which would effectively make my current camera setup illegal under HOA rules. When she finished, she smiled tightly. "Are there any questions before we vote?" Several hands shot up, including mine, but Patricia pointed to someone in the back, one of her friends, I noticed. "Yes, Barbara." "I just want to say I fully support this measure," Barbara said predictably. "I feel uncomfortable knowing that cameras might be recording me when I'm just walking my dog or checking my mail." Patricia nodded approvingly. "Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?" Again, multiple hands were raised, but Patricia selected another friendly face. This continued for several minutes as she carefully called on people she knew would support her proposal while ignoring others. Finally, Nicole stood up without being called on. "Point of order, Madam President. You're selectively recognizing speakers, which violates our bylaws for fair meeting procedures." Patricia's smile faltered. "I'm recognizing people in the order they raised their hands, Miss James." "That's demonstrably false," Nicole replied. "Multiple people, including Mr. Collins, have had their hands up since you asked for questions, yet you've ignored them." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Patricia's eyes narrowed. "Fine, Mr. Collins, you have the floor." I stood, feeling all eyes on me. "Thank you. I have several points to make. First, the proposed camera restriction seems specifically designed to target me after my cameras caught Patricia Blackwell vandalizing my property, a fact many of you may have heard about." Patricia's face flushed. "That matter is unrelated to this proposal and is currently under legal." I continued over her interruption. "Second, these restrictions would prevent homeowners from protecting their property against vandalism and other crimes, which seems contrary to the HOA's stated purpose of maintaining property values and community safety." More murmurs of agreement. "Finally," I said, pulling out a folder, "I've reviewed our HOA charter and bylaws thoroughly, and there's an interesting clause that many of you might not be aware of. Section 12, Paragraph 7 states that any board member who is under investigation for a criminal matter, or whose immediate family member is under such investigation, must recuse themselves from board activities until the matter is resolved." The room went completely silent. "Given that your daughter is currently facing felony charges, Madam President, I move that you recuse yourself from this and all board activities until her case is resolved, as per our bylaws." Patricia's face went from red to white. That's not," she sputtered. The HOA treasurer, a retired accountant named Gerald Peterson, cleared his throat. "He's right, Patricia. That provision was added after the incident with the former treasurer in 2018. I have a copy of the bylaws here, and Section 12, Paragraph 7 does indeed require your recusal." Patricia looked like she might explode. "This is a witch hunt. My daughter's situation has nothing to do with my ability to serve this community." "It's not about your ability," I replied calmly. "It's about following the rules, something you've been very insistent about when it comes to others." One of the other board members, Janet Foster, spoke up. "In light of this information, I move that we table the camera regulation proposal until the board can review it under proper leadership, and that Vice President Peterson assume the role of acting president as per the succession protocol in our bylaws." "I second that motion," called another homeowner. "This is ridiculous," Patricia shouted, but her outburst only made her look more unhinged. Gerald Peterson, now suddenly in charge, called for a vote. The motion passed overwhelmingly, with only Barbara and a few others voting against it. Patricia grabbed her purse and stormed out of the meeting, but not before giving me a look that could have melted steel. "You'll regret this," she hissed as she passed me. After Patricia's dramatic exit, the meeting continued with Gerald Peterson at the helm. The camera regulation proposal was officially tabled, and the conversation shifted to other community matters that had been neglected under Patricia's leadership. I stayed after the meeting to talk with Gerald and several other homeowners who were concerned about Patricia's financial decisions during her tenure. Nicole's information about questionable expenditures had spread, and there were calls for a full audit of the HOA's books. As we were talking, my phone rang. It was Officer Rodriguez. "Mr. Collins, I wanted to let you know that we've made another arrest related to your case." "Another arrest? Who?" "Patricia Blackwell. After you reported the vandalism at your house this morning, we interviewed some witnesses who saw her directing two young men friends of her daughter's, apparently to send you a message. When confronted with this information, one of the young men confessed and implicated Mrs. Blackwell as having orchestrated the vandalism. I was stunned. She actually told them to vandalize my house, according to their statements, yes. She's being charged with criminal conspiracy and witness intimidation, as this appears to be an attempt to pressure you into dropping the charges against her daughter." After thanking Officer Rodriguez for the update, I shared the news with the small group of neighbors who had stayed behind. Their shock quickly turned to concern about the HOA's finances, given that both the president and her daughter were now facing criminal charges. "We need to conduct a full audit immediately," Gerald said gravely. If Patricia was willing to break the law to intimidate a resident, who knows what she might have done with our funds? The following week was a flurry of activity in Maple Creek Estates. The audit of the HOA finances revealed what many had suspected. Patricia had been misappropriating funds for personal expenses, disguising them as community improvements. Over $28,000 was unaccounted for, with evidence suggesting it had been diverted to pay for Madeline's college expenses and Patricia's luxury spa treatments. Criminal charges for embezzlement were added to Patricia's growing legal troubles, while Madeline faced her own court date for the vandalism of my car. The attorney who had tried to broker a deal with me was nowhere to be found, having apparently advised his clients to seek different counsel once the extent of their legal jeopardy became clear. I received an unexpected visit from Tyler Blackwell, Patricia's husband and Madeline's father, who had been traveling for business when everything went down. Unlike his wife and daughter, Tyler seemed genuinely remorseful. "I want to apologize for my family's behavior," he said, standing awkwardly on my front porch. "I had no idea things had gotten so out of hand." I invited him in, curious about what he had to say. "Patricia has always been controlling," he explained as we sat in my living room. "But in the past few years it's become worse. When she became HOA president, it was like she finally had the power she always felt she deserved. I should have seen the warning signs. And Madeline, I asked. Tyler sighed deeply. She idolizes her mother, always has. Patricia taught her that rules are for other people, not for us. He looked up at me, his expression pained. That doesn't excuse what she did to your car or what Patricia did afterward. I'm here because I want to make it right. He handed me a check. This covers the full repair cost for your car, plus an additional amount for your trouble. It's from my personal account, not Patricia's. I've also arranged for a rental car while yours is being fixed. I was surprised by the gesture. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm filing for divorce, he added unexpectedly. This was the wake-up call I needed. I've been enabling Patricia's behavior for too long, and look where it's gotten us. As Tyler left, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. A family was falling apart partly due to my actions, even if they were justified. But I reminded myself that Patricia and Madeline had made their own choices. I had simply ensured they couldn't escape the consequences. 2 weeks later, both Blackwell women had their day in court. Madeline, facing her first offense and showing genuine remorse, perhaps finally realizing the gravity of her actions, was offered a plea deal. 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service, and full restitution for the damage to my car. The felony charge would be reduced to a misdemeanor if she successfully completed her probation. Patricia, on the other hand, faced more serious consequences. With charges of embezzlement, witness intimidation, and criminal conspiracy, she was looking at potential prison time. Her lawyer negotiated a plea agreement as well. 2 years of supervised probation, $50,000 in restitution to the HOA, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board or managing any community funds. The neighborhood began to heal once the Blackwells were no longer in power. Gerald Peterson, as the new HOA president, implemented transparency measures for all financial transactions and established a fair process for handling rule violations. The selective enforcement that had characterized Patricia's reign ended, replaced with consistent application of reasonable standards. My car was repaired and looked as good as new, though every time I looked at it, I was reminded of the bizarre conflict that had consumed so much of my energy. The security cameras that had caught Madeline in the act remained in place, now serving their original purpose of simply providing peace of mind. One evening, about 3 months after the whole ordeal began, I was working in my front yard when Nicole stopped by on her way home from a shift at the hospital. "How's life without the Blackwell regime?" she asked with a smile. "Peaceful," I replied honestly. I actually attended the last HOA meeting without feeling like I was walking into a trap. Nicole laughed. "Gerald's doing a good job. He approved my request for a small vegetable garden in my backyard, something Patricia had denied 3 times. "Did you hear Madeline transferred to a college in California?" I asked. Tyler mentioned it when he came by to check on the car repairs. "Good for her," Nicole said. "Fresh start, away from her mother's influence." We chatted for a few more minutes before Nicole headed home, but not before suggesting we grab dinner, sometime an invitation I happily accepted. Something good, at least, had come out of this neighborhood nightmare. As I finished my yard work and looked around at the quiet, well-maintained homes of Maple Creek Estates, I realized that the real lesson wasn't about standing up to bullies or the importance of security cameras, though those were certainly part of it. The real lesson was about power, how it can corrupt even in the smallest of contexts, and how important it is for communities to hold their leaders accountable. Patricia Blackwell had turned a simple homeowners association into her personal fiefdom, using her position to reward friends and punish perceived enemies. When her daughter keyed my car, it wasn't just an act of vandalism, it was an extension of the entitlement Patricia had cultivated, a belief that they were above the rules that governed everyone else. In the end, a simple security camera had brought down their little empire. Sometimes, justice comes from unexpected places. 6 months later, life in Maple Creek Estates had returned to normal, or rather, had established a new, more equitable normal. Gerald Peterson continued to run the HOA with transparency and fairness. Quarterly financial reports were distributed to all homeowners, and board meetings were recorded and made available to anyone who couldn't attend in person. Patricia and Tyler finalized their divorce, and she moved out of the neighborhood, unable to face the constant reminder of her fall from grace. Tyler stayed, keeping a low profile but gradually reintegrating into community activities. Madeline was thriving at her new college, according to Tyler, who had visited her during spring break. My relationship with Nicole had evolved from neighborly friendship to something more romantic. We often joked that we had Patricia Blackwell to thank for bringing us together, though neither of us would ever thank her to her face. The HOA drama had taught me something important about community living. The rules only work when they're applied fairly, and when those in power are held accountable. It's a lesson that extends far beyond our little neighborhood in Raleigh, but it's one I witnessed firsthand in the most unexpected way. My security cameras remain in place, not because I fear another attack on my property, but because they represent a small victory for accountability in a world that often seems to lack it. And every time I park my repaired Audi in my driveway, sometimes for several days at a time, with not a single complaint from the HOA, I'm reminded that standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, is always worth the effort. The scratch on my car had long been repaired, but the mark left on our community would take longer to fade. Still, as I watched new families move into the neighborhood and old conflicts recede into memory, I was hopeful that Maple Creek Estates had learned its lesson about the dangers of unchecked power, even in something as seemingly benign as a homeowners association. 1 year to the day after Madeline keyed my car, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. The return address was from California. Inside was a handwritten note from Madeline Blackwell. "Dear Mr. Collins," it began. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about what I did to your car and all that happened afterward. I was wrong, not just in my actions but in my attitude. My mom taught me that we were special, that rules were for other people. It's taken me a long time to unlearn that lesson. I'm sorry for the damage I caused not just to your car, but to your sense of security in your own home. I'm working hard to become a better person, someone who respects others and takes responsibility for her actions. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that what happened changed my life, hopefully for the better. Thank you for standing your ground. In a strange way, you helped me more than anyone who ever made excuses for me." The letter was signed simply, Madeline. I showed the letter to Nicole that evening as we sat on my back patio, enjoying the mild spring weather. "That's unexpected," she said after reading it. "Do you think she means it?" I considered the question. "I think she does. People can change if they want to badly enough. Even Patricia." Nicole asked with a raised eyebrow. I laughed. "Let's not get carried away." As the sun set over Maple Creek Estates, casting long shadows across carefully manicured lawns and tasteful landscaping, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. A petty HOA dispute had escalated into criminal charges, exposed corruption, ended a marriage, changed a young woman's life trajectory, and somehow led to me finding happiness with Nicole. Life in suburbia was anything but boring. The Homeowners Association in Maple Creek Estates continues to function as it should as a democratic institution focused on maintaining the community's standards and property values, without becoming a vehicle for personal vendettas. Gerald Peterson's leadership has restored trust in the board, and several new members have brought fresh perspectives to the organization. As for me, I still attend the meetings regularly, not because I have complaints or because I'm worried about enforcement, but because I've learned that engaged citizens are the best defense against the abuse of power. It's a small commitment to ensure that no future Patricia Blackwell can turn our neighborhood into their personal kingdom. Sometimes, when I pass Tyler Blackwell on my morning runs, we exchange polite nods. There's no animosity between us. He was as much a victim of Patricia's behavior as anyone, even if he enabled it for too long. He's selling the house now, preparing for a fresh start just as his daughter did. The red Mustang is gone, the HOA finances are in order, and the selective enforcement of rules is a thing of the past. My security cameras remain in place, but these days they rarely capture anything more exciting than the occasional delivery person or wandering neighborhood cat. And that's exactly how I like it. The Audi still sits in my driveway sometimes, breaking no rules under the revised parking regulations that acknowledge the practical realities of modern homeownership. Its surface is unmarred now, the deep scratch long repaired, though I still sometimes run my fingers along the driver's side, remembering the day a spoiled young woman thought she could get away with vandalism because her mother ran the HOA. That day changed everything, not just for me, but for an entire community that had been suffering under a petty tyrant's rule. All it took was one security camera, one piece of irrefutable evidence, and the courage to stand up when it would have been easier to back down. Sometimes, the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. Sometimes, justice begins in a driveway.